Chapter 17 Gary Read by Tom Elliot.
My journey started the day I came into this world in February of 1960. Reflecting back upon my childhood, one word comes to mind: dysfunctional. My father was a demonstrative man who worked as a cop in San Antonio, and he used his uniform as the power behind his demeanor. He was an arrogant bully with a womanizer attitude. His uniform was his identity, and he spent his entire life hiding behind it. When I was 4 years old, my parents divorced. One day I entered the kitchen to find them deep within yet another argument. Then my dad got up and ripped a calendar off of the wall, yelling, "This is mine!" as he stormed out of the room. As he made his way towards the door, Mom, a slight figure of a woman only 22 years of age, hauled off and gave him a swift kick in the ass. A brave move for someone in her position. I was the middle child of three, all boys. Mom gathered us all together in the kitchen and sat us down for the talk. She told us that the family was going to survive without Dad. My brothers were crying along with Mom. I didn't shed a single tear. I was pleased about the entire situation and couldn't wait to see the last of my father. Mom called her mother in Arizona and made all the arrangements. We were now going to live in the town of Bisbee, a welcome change from the abusive life I had known so far. Once we arrived back at my mom's hometown and got settled in, Mom immediately hooked up with her former high school friends. She didn't waste any time getting back into the schoolgirl party scene. Most of her high school friends were still around. Nothing in Bisbee had changed. Mom fit right in as if she had never left. My brothers and I were left in the care of my grandmother. It was rocky at times, but for the most part, we were taken care of. Well, as a young curious child, I just spent a lot of time getting into trouble. I was always being scolded for one thing or another. I remember this one day when my family couldn't find me. They searched everywhere, calling out my name. I was finally discovered sleeping on the floor in the pantry. I had opened food packages all over the place. I even tried mixing peanut butter with syrup just to see what would happen. The pantry and I were covered in a gooey mess. I was enjoying a peaceful yet sticky afternoon nap right in the middle of it all. As soon as my secret napping place was discovered, I was scolded and locked into my bedroom for my own good. My mother must have thought there was something seriously wrong with me, not realizing that it was just the innocent curiosity of a child's mind. I guess I can't blame Mom for not understanding. After all, she was a child herself. When I was in second grade, my brothers and I were sent back to San Antonio to visit my father. It was not how I wanted to spend my summer vacation. I spent the entire time wishing for the summer to end, so my Texas visit would end as well. The day finally came when it was time to get ready for the school year ahead. I was crushed when my father sent my brothers back to Arizona without me. I was told that I was staying in Texas. When I cried and begged why, I was told that my mother didn't want me. At 8 years old, I was discarded by my mother like trash. I was destined to remain under the torturous eye of my father until I was 14 years old. Those were long years. In my freshman year, I finally returned to Arizona, forever scarred. While living in Texas, I was the outcast of my father's new family. He had remarried, and together they had a daughter, my half-sister. My stepmother was probably the foulest person I have ever come across. She leaked evil from every orifice, a good match for my father. Whenever they would go out, they left me in the care of a couple of brothers living next door. I had known physical and mental torture for years, but during my time with these two brothers, I was introduced to a whole different kind of abuse. Sexual. They made me do things that to this day I have problems dealing with. Most kids under those circumstances would run to their parents for protection, but I didn't have that luxury. I was afraid of telling my father for fear of his thinking I was a homosexual. I was stuck with no place to turn. Those are extremely dark days for me. Awful times. Awful memories. No one was going to protect me. so I had to learn to protect myself. I learned to become a chameleon, changing into whatever I needed to in order to be accepted. I learned to blend into any environment. This would become a helpful tool later on in life when not standing out in the crowd was imperative for survival. My father moved a lot, which is why by the time I was in 8th grade, I had attended 11 different schools. Due to this nomadic lifestyle, I never really developed many friends, which was fine by me. After all, chameleons don't have friends. I was always known as the cop's son or the new kid on the block. All these titles were social strikes against me. Sometimes I was the target of the local bullies. They must have seen me as an easy mark. The Cement Alley Gang was a group of boys who liked taking lunch money from weaklings like me. One day I got tired of turning over my lunch money and going hungry for the rest of the day. I looked around for someone weaker than me, pushed him against the wall and yelled, "Give me your lunch money." He complied. I took the cash and walked right up to the Cement Alley Gang, and in the meanest voice I could muster, I handed them the cash and growled, "Here, this money is from that kid over there. From now on, if you want lunch money, get it from him. Leave me alone. I'm tired of being hungry." I walked away, leaving them surprised and speechless. Later on, they approached me and told me how much they respected what I had done. From that point on, they looked at me as being cool. The chameleon once again blended. My days in Texas were soon coming to an end. Thank God. A relative saw some of the marks that my father's beatings left on me and went directly to my father's captain and updated him on the child abuse I was experiencing. The captain called my father into his office and raked him over the coals. This relative then confronted my father and told him that if he ever hit me with a belt again, she would kill him. He never did use the belt on me after that. Instead, he used his fist. Of course he threatened me with great harm if I ever said anything to anyone again about our private affairs. When I arrived back in Arizona, I settled in with my family in the Tucson area. This was when I started going to church. I needed something in my life that was normal, healthy, and secure, and I found all of that in God. My mom and brothers were regular churchgoers, and so I naturally went along. After a period of time, they all dropped out, but I continued on, faithfully. I guess what I liked most about the church was how everyone seemed to like me. I liked them too. This wasn't the chameleon fitting in either. I was showing my true colors. My affection for them was as genuine as theirs for me. I felt like I belonged. I really enjoyed going to school. I think I liked school so much because I hated being at home. Learning came easy for me. I was always getting A's or B's without effort. I was the classic underachiever. My IQ was measured at 157, so studying was something I never had to do. I could have done much better if I applied myself, but there was no reason for it. I just needed to get by, and I did. When I finally graduated from high school, Mom gave me a ticket to Texas. She still thought I was better off with my father. I stayed there for 8 months. My brother eventually invited me back to Arizona. He had a place in Tucson and said I could stay with him until I got settled in. I accepted and immediately left Texas once again. When I was 19 years old, I met a girl who just turned 17. I fell in love immediately. We both wanted to get married, but nobody would let us. Our families were the obstacles. We fixed that problem in no time. We got pregnant. She was attending a Christian school, and once she was with child, they kicked her out. Her stepfather, a guy who I really liked, helped me get a job. I started working on a Monday, and we were married the following day. My dream was starting to fall in place. Sadly, the relationship didn't last. Now when I look back, I could see clearly where the weak link was. I had turned into my dad. I was abusive. Abuse was all I had known all of my life, so it came natural to me. My wife was afraid of me, and pretty soon she left with my 1-year-old daughter. I came home one day after work, and everyone and everything was gone. I waited and waited, thinking it would all work itself out. I believed she would come running in the front door with my child, telling me she understood and wanted to rekindle our love. I was delusional. I had become the beast that I hated so much. The chameleon turned into a dragon. Soon I started hanging out with my brother and his college buddies. We would party every chance we had, drinking, popping speed, and smoking pot. Why not? I had nothing else to do. I continued to party while waiting for my wife to come home. Then one day, I was served with divorce papers. That was when I learned that she was pregnant with my second child, a son I would never know. The party life went on, and slowly my life plummeted into an abyss. I was becoming desperate for a solution, a way out. So I took the only reasonable step I could. I picked up the phone and dialed. I made the desperate call. I was willing to make a deal with the devil. I telephoned my dad. My father was surprised to hear me on the phone. We hadn't talked in a long time. I told him that I finished with school and brought him up to date on my failing marriage. I said I needed a change. I told him that I wanted to move back to Texas and become a cop just like him. I could hear his chest fill with pride. He fell for it. He sounded excited about the prospect of having his own son stand beside him in uniform. The chameleon strikes once again. The last thing I wanted was to be a cop, especially one like my father. I just needed a free ticket to anywhere, a place to escape to. So telling him what he wanted to hear just seemed easier. Once in Texas, I took the police entrance exams. I tried to mess up as many answers as I could, just to ensure I would not be accepted. After failing a number of times, on purpose, my father said that it didn't matter. He could get me in without my passing the exam. My father left me no option. I had to tell him the truth. I got drunk and sat him down and said, "Dad, you just don't get it. I don't want to be cop or anything like you." He took it rather well. Better than I expected. He sat down and asked me what it was I wanted to do with my life, and with that, we entered into our first normal father-son conversation. I ended up working for copy products of San Antonio and quickly climbed their corporate ladder. I started at $800 per month and aced every class or school they sent me to. I was soon to become their best technician with doors of opportunity flinging open for me all along the way. I became best friends with the boss's son, and I am sure that helped. We would drink and smoke pot together all the time. This is when I would meet the girl who would become my second wife. She was from Pennsylvania. When I started getting bored with my job and my work relationship started falling apart, I went to Pennsylvania with my new wife to see what opportunities I could exploit. I got to meet my bride's family. Most of them seemed normal except for my wife's brother, who was heavily into serious drugs. I tried working in various fields such as welding, cooking, and even automotive repair. My cycle was the same. I would find a job, master it quickly, and then get bored and start searching for another challenge. During our 5 years of rocky marriage, we had a daughter. I spent 3 of those years as a stay-at-home dad. I was still into the excessive drinking, and pretty soon my wife took my daughter and left. I had been down this road before. Her dad came up to me and said, "If you ever want to see your wife and child again, you better get into rehab." There was a local rehab facility that held a 28-day program at a cost of $18,600. I qualified for a scholarship and successfully completed the program. The first thing I did when I was released was to move back in with my wife and daughter. My family was once again complete. In only 2 weeks from the day I moved in, my wife moved out. She told me, "I think I liked you better when you were drunk." I was devastated. It was really hard on me. When I went into rehab, I was working for a mill as an auxiliary supervisor. They told me they wanted me back when I finished my rehab. I ended up moving up the ladder rapidly. They finally offered me my own plant. My former boss now worked for me. I took a small apartment on top of a local tavern, and pretty soon I started working as a bartender in my spare time. Everybody knew everybody, and I was fitting right in. I was becoming part of the local scenery. The chameleon had landed. The girls were non-stop. I was sleeping with married ladies, single ladies, any ladies. It didn't matter. My room upstairs was very convenient, especially for the drug dealers and users. When the plant was about to go through a layoff, I volunteered to leave. I needed more time for my social activities, and work at the plant was starting to get in the way. Once the plant accepted my resignation, I started working full-time in the bar, getting my ladies, drugs, and booze for free. I was literally getting everything for free. I soon learned that nothing in life really comes free. Like every other time before, I started getting restless. It was time to move on. I started working for a transport company, moving furniture from the East Coast to the West Coast. We work all day and then party all night. This went on for over a year before my need for change hit once again. I knew that it was time for me to finally settle down at a place I once called home. As the moving van was cruising past Tucson, I told the driver to stop and let me off. I contacted my brother, and he agreed to offer me some assistance. I stayed with him for a while. His wife didn't like me very much. My brother gave me $1,000 and signed the title of a pickup truck over to me. Pretty soon I was living in my own little apartment, starting over from scratch. When I was in Pennsylvania with my ex's family, I met a girl I really liked. After getting my apartment in Tucson set up and landing a job, I called her up and asked her if she wanted to move to Tucson. She did, with her daughter in tow. Now this girl liked to party. Maybe that is why we got along so well. While I was away at work, she would be hanging with our neighbor who was into some heavy-duty drugs. One night she asked me if I wanted to party with the neighbors, and I said, sure, why not? That was when I got hooked on crack. It didn't take long before I lost my job, lost my truck, and lost her. I smoked it all right into non-existence. I went from rehab facility to rehab facility, and from relationship to relationship. I successfully completed all the rehab programs. I would stay clean for a year, then something would happen, pushing me towards a relapse. Then get clean for 6 months and relapsed once again. This was my cycle, my life, my vortex of doom. I floundered around in Tucson for 6 years before heading back to Bisbee. I met another girl and got married. She would be my third wife, but it didn't last. Nothing in my life ever lasted. My relationship with this woman was only physical. This is when I started having dreams about the sexual abuse I endured as a child. Those memories I tried to bury for so many years were now coming to the surface. I was feeling the guilt once again, and not sure how to handle it. I became reclusive and withdrawn. I locked myself in a room and refused to leave for almost 6 months. Finally, I was taken to a hospital and was diagnosed as bipolar. This destroyed my marriage, and I really felt badly for her. She didn't deserve this. Between the meds I was given and my drinking, I just couldn't put my life back together. This would be the beginning of my homelessness. After going from psych ward to psych ward, I tried to kill myself by slashing my wrist. God had a different plan for me. But before my healing, God wanted me to learn a few more lessons. My torment continued. I stayed in shelters, got jobs, and continued to flounder some more. It was such a hard time in my life. Then to make things worse, I had some friends who were going up to Eugene, Oregon. They said there were plenty of great paying jobs up there, and asked me if I wanted to go. I thought long and hard about that offer. I had some money saved, and there was really nothing holding me here, so I agreed. That night we partied. I got high and drunk, celebrating tomorrow and the new beginning it would bring. When I woke up, hungover, I was devastated to see that the guys were gone with my luggage and all of my cash. All I had were the clothes on my back. That was when I realized the truth. I was a stupid person. I was a useless person, here on this earth to be taken advantage of. Why was God showing me this? I was now living in the Relito riverbed. I stayed there for over a year. I would eat whatever people threw away and would sleep on a bench. I used to sleep under the overpasses or wherever I could lay my head down. Then one day a cop came up to me and told me that sleeping on the bench was a lot safer. I listened and slept there for the rest of my riverbed days. From my bench, the sunset views were amazing. I would spend my days walking the Riverwalk footpath from behind the Tucson Mall and go all the way to the Craycroft crossing several miles away, and then back again. I would collect things I found and even spend part of the day feeding crumbs to the squirrels. The daily squirrel feeding gave me a sense of purpose. In the late afternoon, I would make sure I got back to my bench in time for the sunset. That brought peace to my world. It was as if God was bringing me hope. I hated it when I would pass people on that footpath. They would go out of their way to avoid coming near me. They were afraid of me because of the way I looked and smelled. I decided to start cleaning myself up a little better. I used the public bathrooms early in the morning so I would have privacy, and pretty soon I was clean and presentable. I started washing every single day. People no longer avoided me. They would actually smile at me and say, "Good morning." It was as if God was showing me another side of life. I was now ready to leave the riverbed. I needed to find a shelter and started getting my life back together. God was leading me down a different path, one that I was going to follow, resisting here and there along the way. One day I was sitting at a bus stop with no money, contemplating on how far the nearest shelter was. My feet were sore, so I was in no condition to walk all those miles. A man came up to me and we started talking. He told me about the Gospel Rescue Mission, and that if I didn't mind sitting through church every day, it was a great place to get a warm meal and a clean bed to sleep in. I listened to every word. Before he left, he handed me a $10 bill. For someone living in a riverbed, that $10 made me feel rich. I spent it well. I bought a bus day pass for $2, a bag of weed for $5, and the rest went to tobacco. I felt secure knowing that I could ride the bus all day and I could get high and smoke tobacco, a luxury I was not accustomed to. I got on the bus and within the hour arrived at the Gospel Rescue Mission. Standing at the front gate, I hesitated. I kept thinking about what I was told earlier about having to sit through church. That was when I remembered liking church as a child. So I closed my eyes and prayed, "God, if you give me a bed here, I will throw away this pot and tobacco." I entered the gate, completed the interview, and was assigned a bed. I kept my promise. My interview with the director was an interesting conversation. I knew about the 18-month Life Foundation Restoration Program. If I could get in, my problems would be solved. Initially, I didn't trust the director, so I thought I would put him and God to the test. When I was asked to tell him a little about myself, I explained every graphic detail of who I was and from where I came. I didn't leave any horrific detail out. Surely they would escort me off of the premises once they knew who they were dealing with. The director sat back and listened with sort of a shocked look upon his face. I dumped it all onto his lap, trying to prove to myself that they couldn't be trusted. When I was done, he took a breath and replied, "Okay, I think we can help you." That wasn't the answer I was expecting. I signed in feeling like God finally brought me to where he wanted me to be. I was in the program for over a month when my bipolar issue kicked in. I hadn't been taking my meds since the day I arrived, so when I had my flare-up, I had to leave the program and go to Keno Hospital. I was placed on Thorazine, which turned me into a Gumby type of person. I became very good at having a blank look upon my face while drooling on my shoes. I hated those meds. Once I was back at the Gospel Rescue Mission, I cried out to God. I told God that I didn't want to take any more pills. I asked him to either fix me or kill me. I went to bed praying harder than I ever prayed before. I prayed myself to sleep. I had the best night's sleep I could remember. Since that night, I never took another pill and never had another bipolar episode. That was on November of 2001, almost 8 years ago. I haven't been high or drunk since. Before I finished the program, I was hired by the Gospel Rescue Mission as a part-time night manager. I then went to work for a mission in Nogales until the Gospel Rescue Mission asked me to return to Tucson to work for them on a full-time basis. I agreed. This is where I met my present wife, who happens to be the director of community ministries. I am now the supervisor of the distribution center. I work with my wife on a daily basis, all in God's name. We travel around to other churches and tell our story, inspiring other people who are now where I once was. I can see why God waited to bring me here. I realize He had to teach me all I needed to know before becoming His warrior. In total, I have been married 4 times. I have a total of 4 children and 4 grandchildren. Everything in my life has changed, including the strained relationship with my mom. Time heals deep wounds. She and my stepdad actually came to visit with us on their vacation. It was a special time. I received pictures and reports of my first 2 kids and my other 2 kids I get to see on vacations. My son is having his own battles with drugs and is on the streets in Phoenix. I hope he can see in me the answer, which is there for him. He just has to reach out for it like I did. God will see to it when the time is right. I pray each and every day for all of them. It is amazing when I look back over the years at how time has healed my mind and my spirit. I do wish I could find some healing for my body. I've beaten up my body so badly over the years. I would like to be healthier so I can be the best I can be for my wife. I do cherish her and thank Jesus for bringing her into my life. Dad, well, he is still the same. I took my wife to see him a couple of years ago. He was just as ugly with her as he was with me when I was a child. Once my wife met my father, she leaned over and whispered to me, "I'm so sorry that you had to endure this man. I now understand all the stories you told me about him." His ugliness just brought my wife and I that much closer. Praise God. I cherish my life now and the woman who has become my driving force. I was her first date. I was her first kiss and her first boyfriend. For a woman of 44 years, that says a lot. We share so much now. We share everything. However, I love the 70s rock, but she has more of a Latin musical taste. She's going to teach me to salsa one of these days, but for now, we are working on a swing dancing. Thank you for listening to my story, and I pray that it lands in front of those who would benefit the most. People who are lost, struggling to be found. Just remember one thing. If you seek, you shall find. I did.